Accessing secure channel. The Agent Files, where aspiring agents rise and masters flourish. Powered by Agent Builder Coaching. Mission initiated. File loading.
Hi there, this is Peter Fan for Agent Builder Coaching, and for our podcast called The Agent Files. This section is for rookie realtors, and today we're talking specifically about this magical thing called lead generations, and then specifically kind of the foundational steps, because we could honestly spend days on all of the various facets of lead generation. Because when everything is said and done, in most businesses, lead generation is the lifeline to business, to your success, to your sustainability and what have you. So it is definitely a very key topic, and we can go many different directions. It is also probably one of the key topics that many aspiring new rookie realtors and even very experienced realtors are somewhat intimidated by, and to the point that oftentimes they don't even want to talk about it or don't even want to do it. So let me first and foremost try to demystify lead generation a little bit. There's really two parts to lead generation. Okay, one is getting in touch, connecting with people that you already have some sort of a relationship with. Not real estate related, but some sort of a connection, some sort of an interaction, some sort of a acquaintance level, sometimes even past employer, peers, co-students, people interested in the same things, hobbies, sports, what have you, right? Friends, family. They're all part of what we typically refer to as sphere of influence. They're not really prospects, but you do know them. You do have a relationship with them. And as such, generating business out of that sphere of influence, it takes on a slightly different note, a different voice, a different tone, a different method, mainly because there is this assumed acquaintance level, knowledge level of each other, to, in some cases, of course, very long-term relationships that are established. So you want to nurture, you want to protect, you want to guard those relationships and not become overly pushy, salesy, artificial, and literally ruin the relationship. That's certainly not what you want to do under any circumstances. So that sphere of influence relationship will take a different tone and voice. So we're not actually going to focus on that group specifically in this particular session. It's an important group, and it's definitely the group that you will, over the long term, get most of your business from. What I'm going to touch on is the groups of people that you don't actually have any kind of relationship with, professionally or otherwise, that you hope to get business from. So specific targeted audiences, whether that is, focusing on home buyers, home sellers, whatever it is, people that are relocating, people in the military, employers, banks, lawyers, notaries, people that live on a city block or in a particular building, all can be targeted audiences for you to actively, or even I typically refer to it as proactively, starting to contact and create relationships with an intent to seek out whether or not people are interested in buying or selling or relocating or investing, or may know of anybody that wants that. Okay, so it's a very proactive activity that, yes, may be triggered by something that you did. It's not in response to something that they did. And that's kind of why I call it proactive. You take the initiative, right? That to me would be referred to as lead generation, prospecting, because it is done under your control. You're kind of triggering the action and the interaction. Okay, so door knock, there's all kinds of forms that can take that, and some are more effective, more efficient, more productive than others. Right? Yeah, so you have there's a I oftentimes you hear me talk about a trainer out of the good old bad old days, and so Floyd Wickman is one of those trainers out of the 70s and 80s and 90s, and he referred to prospecting. That in prospecting, you needed to have what he called a gut gauge, right? A little dial that in your brain or in your gut would say, "Oh, this is a difficult form of lead generation or prospecting." So, for example, you would say, "Well, expired listing, that's an 8 or a 9 on the gut gauge, right?" And a for sale by owner, that's probably a 10. That's probably one of the hardest groups of people to approach because they've already said they don't want to talk to you. That's what the sign says. As an agent, don't talk to me. The other sign, what the other interpretation of the sign is, of course, that hey, I am trying to sell my house, so at least I'm ready, willing, and able to talk shop on the sales part. Just don't talk to me about commission or don't talk to me about listing contract because I don't want to do that. Right? That's kind of what they're telling you. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't connect with them, but it takes more guts. That's why it's high on the gut gauge. Whereas doing an open house is, yes, you do an open house, and that's a proactive activity, but in essence, the people are coming to you. So it's kind of one of the softer ways, one of the easiest ways of doing lead generation. Okay. All right. So let's walk and talk through this program. There is going to be a very extensive workbook that will help you. We're to be totally honest, we are still in the process of finishing off the workbook. There is also a toolkit that will come with it, with some scripts and some dialogues and some systems and some sequences that you can follow. But let me start off with a story that I've told in another session before, but I'll say it again here because it is that simple. Okay. One of the most successful realtors I've ever worked with, here in Victoria, as a matter of fact, but it could have been anywhere. It could have been absolutely anywhere. He was, I wouldn't say new to Victoria, but relatively new. He had lived on the other side of the Malahide, which is northern part of further north on Vancouver Island. And before that, he had come out of Saskatchewan and what have you. So he knew people and was easy to approach and talk to, but he didn't have a vast list of people that he started out with. So when he became a realtor in his first year, and subsequent years, he pretty much kept doing it because it worked. So his kicker was he would come into the office at before 8 o'clock in the morning. Now, our office was in a shopping center. Okay. But he would come into the office before 8 o'clock in the morning. He would make a stack of 20 business cards. He would take his notepad and would kind of do a little bit of homework, a little bit of preparation, and then he would literally go into the mall. And if he was sick and tired of our mall, he would go to another mall. But literally what he would do is would go into the mall, he would start talking to people, and would say, man, you're doing a great job. And it didn't matter to him whether they were staff of the mall or whether they were employees of the stores in the mall or whether they were, were basically potential customers in the mall. And he would find a reason to chit-chat with them, right? And would compliment them on something, or but staff and employees, he would try to find a reason to compliment them. He would literally say, "Hey, you're doing a great job. We need people like you in real estate." I would say, "Well, it has nothing to do with buying and selling real estate." No, it doesn't. But it does have something to do about the business of real estate, right? So very quickly, and that this makes sense, right? Very quickly had brought the topic onto the business of real estate, even though he hadn't broached their interest in buying or selling. So then he would change subject somewhat, and he would do the typical FORD thing: the family, occupation, recreation, and dreams. Any one of those four topics are safe topics to talk about. Yeah, you can talk about the weather and all of it, but family, occupation, recreation, dreams are very safe topics to talk to pretty much anybody about, and you'll draw out some response, some typically positive feedback. Anyway, he would make a couple of notes, and they would chit chat, and then at some point in time or another, the topic would come back to real estate. He would make sure that some new statistic or a bit of news out of the media or interest rate adjustments, or it's been busy in our market, and so do you see more people in the mall? He would find a way to bring it back into the conversation. And then somewhere along the way, he would ask, would you be terribly offended if I periodically send you some information about what's going on in the real estate market? And some people would say yes, and some people would say no. Well, the people that say no, we would say, thank you so very much, and enjoy your day. Thanks so very much, and we'll see you later. And the people that did say, yeah, sure, I'd be interested in that, he would literally hand them his notebook and say, now, would you please write down your contact information? And now, of course, you can literally zap contact information back and forth between the phones. Real easy, real quick. And he would then make sure that he would, again, be polite and kind and say, thank you very much for the information, and I'll make sure to be in touch. And he would then make sure that he would write a handwritten note that day and get it into their hands as quickly as possible, either dropping it off at their home, reconnecting with them at the work site or on the job or what have you. They would get it into their hands as quickly as possible, literally within 24 hours. Okay, that's actually a really key part, because right then and there, he separated himself from everybody else. Right? Lots of people will say, "Yeah, I'll do that," and then not. Right? And then a few days later, he would contact him again and say something to the effect, now that you've had a few days to look at that information, was there anything, that was raised more questions, or did you get the information? Did you read it? Yada, yada. He would find a reason to chit-chat about what was going on. And then again would say, thank you, and, I'll get in touch with you if something else comes up. And then typically within a week, he would do something similar like that. Just so in about 4 or 5 weeks, he would contact them upwards to about 6 or 7 times. 5-time minimum, but 6 or 7 times, and dependent on their interest. If there was a high level of interest in buying or selling, he would intensify it. If it was a little bit less, then he would just kind of make sure that he stayed in touch. And then they would go on to his marketing list of making sure that they would get a newsletter every month, and that he would phone on their birthdays or home purchase or sale anniversary, and so on and so forth. So, and by the way, he did all of that without a computer. No computer. It was all 100% manual. Now, of course, nowadays you don't need to do it manually. You can use computers, but he wasn't particularly computer savvy. By the way, in his first year, he sold 65 houses, and he never sold fewer than that. For the first 5 or 6 years, without an assistant, all by himself, and never had an issue with any of that. And after that, he did have, some assistance here and there. But think about this: 20 business cards, 5 days a week, right? That's 100 people a week that he added to his list in some way, shape, or form. He didn't count the ones that he talked to and didn't get a contact information. They didn't count. The only ones that counted were the ones that he got contact information from, right? So added 100 people a week to his list. That's amazing, right? In a previous session, we've talked about that if you have 100 people in your database that you contact on a regular basis, there's about 3.5 to 5 deals per year that you should be able to draw from that. Right? There's probably a total of about 7 to 10 deals there, but you're not going to get them all. So conservatively, you should be able to get 3.5 to 5 deals out of that. when you become master level realtor, then you can probably convert more of those and possibly get to 7 or 8 deals per year out of 100 people. Okay. So what I just described to you, it was a mindset, right? His commitment was 20 people a day, right? 20 people a day, period. Right? It required him to practice, to learn some scripts, some dialogue, some objectives, to have a very distinct process, right? Little system. And then the biggest of it all is the consistency. He never stopped using that. Never stopped using that. But there was no speciality, there was no niche, other than he went from one mall to the next mall to the next mall because he didn't really want to do this out in the street. But he figured that in the malls it was, very easy to make these relationships. And of course, as he returned to the malls, he would also reconnect with all the people that he had made contact with. So over time, it had many, many other benefits for him. Right, he would get discounts in stores, and a manager would call him in and say, "Hey, we've got a new hire, and they're looking for something." It was just it worked really, really well for him. Okay, that was his niche, and I'm not suggesting that you need to do the same thing, but I'm just telling you how simple, right? Because there's nothing complicated about anything that I just described. Nothing. Right? You can write a handwritten note. You can create a little nice handout type thing, or have a little script that is friendly and non-threatening. And if you want to do it with a buddy, then do it with a buddy, and so on and so forth. But it's simple, nothing complicated about it. So again, this is really all about mindset, learning some skills, learning some scripts, setting up a little system that takes care of all of this, and then be consistent about it. Right. So, again, prospecting isn't really selling. It's really just about you connecting with other people. You're not actually bothering people. Most people, if you are kind enough and genuine enough, and the example that I gave you really, really illustrated that, is that it was not about trying to even begin the topic of selling. It was really about introduction, being genuinely interested in their life, their work, their dreams, their objectives. And yeah, real estate came up a little bit, but if it got too tense, then you back right off, right? You're not bothering people. In fact, they will appreciate it. You'd be surprised how many positive responses you're going to get. There's many examples that I remember a realtor very well who would literally every day of the week he was in a different coffee shop for 2 hours, and in the coffee shop he would make it a point to compliment people, and basically made his little table that he had, cornered, so to speak, in the coffee, to make sure that everybody could see that he was in real estate in some way, shape, real estate paper and computer with a laptop with MLS system on a sticker on the back, and it was pretty obvious. He had a name badge and the logo of his company on his jacket. Very obvious that he's in real estate, and people would talk to him. In fact, one of the most successful things that I've ever suggested to somebody is to get on the ferry, right, between Vancouver or the Lower Mainland and Vancouver Island, and don't get off for the whole day. Just stay on there. Just keep going back and forth. Yeah, it'll cost you $35, $50, $100, whatever it's going to cost you. But where else are you going to get thousands of people as a captive audience that have no other place to go? And they're all coming and going to one place or another for a reason. So you have a huge opportunity to talk to people. In the good old bad old days, you could actually stay on the ferry and didn't have to go off. You can't do that anymore. There's all kinds of course, bureaucratic and financial reasons for that. But it's still a really good way of making sure that you get connected with lots and lots of people. So really, you're not pitching, you're just chatting. Okay. Now, the reality of real estate If you're not generating leads, you proactively getting in touch with people, talking to them, building relationship, making connections. If you're not generating connections, you're not in the business. You're unemployed. That's where the business is. It's not in showing houses. That's a result of lead generation. Writing contracts, it's a result of lead generation, right? It's you have no leads, you have no clients. No clients means no income. Period. Full stop. There's just sorry. It is that blunt. It's that harsh. But it's also that simple, right? If you find a connection, this is why we keep talking about superpowers and business plans. Your superpower, your connection with the largest possible group of people that you can think of, that you have an affinity with, that you have a relationship with. And now you build on that relationship because of the interest, the hobby, the sport, the cultural background. It doesn't really matter what that connection is. As long as you can build on it, now it's no longer harsh. It's no longer strange. It is actually quite friendly, quite nice, because you know these people already, right? You not necessarily personally know, but you know their interests, you know their hobbies, you have a symbiotic relationship just by that alone. Okay, it makes your life so much easier. All right, now one of the most favorite lines that I personally have used for many years, and it articulates this topic so very clearly, right? And it's obvious when I say it. Prospecting truly is opportunity creation. So listen to this. If I could show you without a shadow of a doubt that I can make you financially independent in the next 5 years, would that be worth a cup of coffee? Okay. Now, is that schemy? Is that salesy? Is it pitchy? I mean, is it negative? You tell me what you think of it. But I can tell you that it had a closing rate somewhere around 75%. Right? So 75% of the people that I use that line on would say, "Yeah, let's talk." And some would say, "Well, I don't have time now, but I'm certainly interested." Okay. Now, can you show somebody that they can become financially independent using real estate in the next 5 years? Yeah, you can. You still can to this day. Absolutely. It'll take a lot of work. It's not going to come overnight and easy, but it's absolutely categorically possible. Okay. No, and if they say, well, hang on, what you explain to me what that means and what that takes, that's too intense, it's too harsh, too impersonal, and I couldn't do that. Well, okay. Would it be okay if it took you 10 years then? Half the intensity, right? Because it does require that you need to buy real estate to fix it up and either move, sell it and move and buy another one, or find opportunities and work with others to do the same type of thing. Okay, but it is one way of you introducing an opportunity based on realistic expectations that are out there for potential buyers and sellers. Now, not everybody looks at the real estate as an investment opportunity. So it's not a line that everybody's going to go jump all over. No, I mean, if you're dealing with people that are aging or well, let's take aging, people that are aging. Being able to age in their own home, in their own community, is likely more important than an investment opportunity. Would you say? So, what would you say to those people? Well, that's your skill level. I can I'll give you some examples. But the whole point of the exercise is that you decide what your business model is going to be. And again, your business plan will help you with that. But conversations lead to appointments. It always reminds me of a sideline here for a moment, a segue for a moment. Many salespeople have a tendency to have conversations and make them into them talking, right? The best conversations to have is you asking, you not talking, you asking, you obtaining, let other people talk. They will tell you exactly what they need and what they want if you let them. Okay. So asking questions. As Floyd Brinkman would call them, he would call them wopen questions. Wopen being everything that starts with a who, with the W. Who, what, where, why, when, right? And then how. But that's really who written differently. Okay. It's open-ended questions allow people to talk, right? Rookie mistake. Waiting to feel confident before taking action. Now, you're never going to feel confident. Trust me, I'm nearly 40 years in the business. The last time, starting a new conversation with people that you've never talked to, it's always a little bit, shall I? But when you do, 99% of the time, it's actually pretty exciting. So you get some standard lines, and you have some intro pitches, and you create some language that allows you to talk to people in a friendly and casual way without having to get too nervous about it. And give yourself enough space to exit from the conversation if you need to, right? For example, if you are going to go, I don't know, you're doing pop-bys on people that you have had conversations with, then the pop-by, your first thing you're going to say is, well, I'm just popping by. That's exactly the point, right? I'm just on my way to, I'm just popping by, dropping this off. I'm not going to take a minute, but how are things going? And what's going on with this? And what's going on with that? Any progress? Okay. And then literally say, okay, thanks. We'll talk to you soon. Have fun. All the best. Right? So it doesn't have to take more than 30 seconds sometimes. Okay. And yes, it will improve over time. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So here are 4 typical lead sources. Now, we've touched on sphere of influence, and we're going to spend a lot more time on sphere of influence because that ultimately is your biggest source, right? So all the people that you talk to, deal with, prospect for open houses, for sale by owners, expired listings, foreclosures, military relocation, government relocation, big employers hiring or firing, you name it. There's gazillion reasons that can become a target for your prospecting, right? And all the campaigns that you can create online. And then, of course, you have all the online stuff that people are advertising or doing organically. All right. So lots and lots of ways to generate leads. Pick one. I would say, so become a master of sphere of influence, because that's where ultimately most of your business is. And then pick one of the proactive approaches. Now, if you're picking online leads, to me, that's a reactive method. Okay. It's actually not prospecting in the true sense of the word, because all you do is put stuff out there in hopes that somebody's going to respond. It doesn't matter whether that's organic material that you put out there or whether it is advertising or one way or another, people need to react to what you put out there. So to me, that's not actually prospecting. But lots of other trainers and coaches consider that to be an efficient and effective way of lead generation. And so I'm not faulting people for saying that it is lead generation. And if it generates leads, power to it. but it's not proactive, right? It's not, you don't control it. Somebody else has to take control. Whereas if you pick up the phone and talk to somebody, you took control of the situation. And that to me gives you absolute control over your destiny. Okay. So I would encourage you to do your sphere of influence in one form of proactive lead generation. And it doesn't matter what that is. Farming, geographic farming, or property farming, or people farming, or hobby and interest and age group, property type, and any kind of niche, new construction, renovation homes, low end, high end, doesn't really matter. Okay, you become the expert, and now actively go after the marketplace. Now, the people that are not interested in buying or selling at that point in time, that are part of that niche, that target audience, can very much become part of your sphere of influence, right? So you're building that sphere of influence, you nurture that sphere of influence no matter what. It becomes really your almost your savings account. And it will start generating significant amounts of business to the point that about 3 to 5 years from now, you're going to look up and go like, oh, look at that. More and more of the business now comes out of my sphere of influence versus coming from my prospecting, right? So in the first few years, you'll see that 60, 70, 80, sometimes even 90% of the business comes from prospecting. You reaching out, connecting with people that you've never connected with before. And then slowly but gradually, both by people becoming more familiar with you that are already in your sphere of influence and the people that you've added to your sphere of influence, you're going to see more and more referrals, the odd buyer that all of a sudden pops up or comes back into your life and says, hey, we talked a year ago or 2 years ago. We weren't ready then, but now we are. We've got the bank confirmation. We've got this sorted out, that sorted out. Now we're ready. Okay, and that's going to happen, but it's going to take a little while. And then all of a sudden, you'll look up and go like, "Whoa!" Now almost all of my business is coming from my sphere of influence, and that's a dangerous zone to be in because then inevitably a lot of agents stop prospecting altogether. And you'd be surprised how quickly that teeter-totter can actually move the other way because markets move, market shifts. So you're always in need of new people to be added to your database. Okay. So pick one, sphere of influence. Yeah, open houses is okay. It's kind of a soft one. But pick at least one proactive lead generation activity. Okay. Warm versus cold. Of course, people coming to you, that's warm, right? Sphere of influence, warm. Cold being, we're leery. We don't really want to do anything. We're not ready. You contacted us. Why are you contacting us? Right? Well, people, maybe all you can do is build curiosity. And that's a slightly different approach from what you would do if you already knew them, right? The 80-20 rule. So 80% of your results come from 20% of your efforts. Okay? 80% of your results come from 20% of your efforts. So focus on high yielding activities. Let me give you an example. Okay? If you were to contact 5 people that are, maybe going to buy or sell, what's the best you can hope for out of those 5? Half of them, some of them. Well, the best you can hope for is that all of them. Okay. Now, if you were the preferred realtor to a lawyer that works exclusively with estates and probates, that's all he does. If you get a referral from that lawyer, what's the likelihood that you're going to close that business? Okay. So there's one person that can generate 10, 15, 20 deals a year for you. See the high yield? One person, 20 deals? Whoa! Right? And please Trust me, this happens. Okay. True story, different field, but true story that many years ago was a realtor came into the business. He had a severance payout, a significant amount of money. And he thought, hey, I'm going to spend some, if not all of it, in presenting myself, getting myself into the business, and I want to be successful right off the word go. And as it so happened, he knew a builder developer, and he went to the builder developer and said, listen, why don't you let me invest in your next project, which happened to be a condo building? And he said, I've got $500,000. I want to invest in your building. Now, there's two conditions. I want a reasonable return on investment. Give me a reasonable return on my $500,000, and I want the listings. So he literally bought the listings for all intents and purposes. And of course, the developer builder said, well, hey, I've got a guy that's got a very, very significant motivation to work his butt off to get these properties sold. Why wouldn't I list with him? Right? Even though he's a rookie, he's going to work, he's going to make it happen. And he's creative because he's already shown it. I've never had anybody come to me, offer me $500,000 just to buy a piece of this development, which at the time, when builders are always tight for money, It doesn't matter how big or small the development, they're always tight for money. Why? Because in the first, year or so, there's nothing but money going out. There's no income. Right? On any development, the first year of that development, the paperwork, the legal stuff, the zoning, the application, it's all money out. Right? So if they don't have to finance that money, that can be a significant savings in the overall profitability of a development. So $500,000 can actually make a significant difference in that. Okay. So this developer, of course, went along, and it's a very long story, very short. The Rookie Realtor literally started his career with a 48-unit condo development and never looked back, of course. Never looked back. So, Pareto's rule very much applies. Very much applies. One of the key mistakes many people make is thinking that a conversation is going to get you a client or a deal or a referral. No. All it is a conversation. The conversation may lead to relationships. The relationship will lead towards either direct clients, the people themselves, or referrals to people that may want to buy or sell real estate. So this is why one of the having been around for a long time, you get these interesting situations. We've gone through a very, 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 very active market during the whole COVID period of time, of course, where realtors really, for all intents and purposes, became order takers, right? You had a listing and 100 people will show up to see this listing, and you would end up with 5, 10, 15 offers. That's not the typical norm in real estate, right? The listings are on the market 60, 90, 120 days, and you need to work it. You need to negotiate. You got to promote it and be active about it, and so on and so forth. So when the market all of a sudden started to slow down, a lot of realtors looked up and went like, what the heck? Where are all these buyers going? And where did all the sellers go? The motivated ones. Anyway. Well, all of a sudden, realtors had to start working again. Well, then it's conversation. What's going on? Why were you in the market? What's motivating you? How are we going to help you? How are we going to transition you from point A to point B? And it takes effort, time, patience, right? It's no longer order taking. So leads from the internet are an entirely different breed from what it was 2-3 years ago. Okay. But anyway, that's just part of what you need to become comfortable with, that markets forever shift, of course, right? So your daily conversation target, I would say 10 is a really good target. 10 per day, really good target. If you can do that, then you're adding 50, 60 people to your list on a weekly basis, and then find a reason to stay in touch with it. It's really, if you can do 10 a day, you're rocking and rolling in no time. Okay? So, of course, start with your sphere of influence. And again, I don't want to really dig into them too much today, but I want you to recognize that goes simultaneously, right? You're meeting new people, and you're meeting people that you already know, like, and trust. Right? The warm and fuzzies, as we call them, the sphere of influence, they're much easier to talk to. Why? Because they already know you. So you talking to them is easier for you, but it's also easier for them because you already know them. They already know you. And therefore, the possibility of referrals and what have you is a little bit higher. Certainly referrals. That the beginning, you'll find that certainly your sphere of influence tends to be somewhat more referral based because most people know people that are going to move and don't necessarily need to move themselves. Right? Prospecting mindset shift. You're not interrupting. You're offering opportunities, clarity, information, guidance, update what's going on, interpret what's going on, right? A lot of people are confused, by the way, about real estate and real estate markets. They think that statistics published by, I don't know, CREA or CMHC, that are national statistics, are relevant to your community or their property type. Well, they're not. They have nothing to do with each other. The only correlation is that it happens to be real estate. But what the heck happens in all of Canada is not relevant to your specific property and your particular house. And the better you can articulate that, the better you can illustrate that, the more receptive ears you're going to be talking to. Okay? And you want to become the source to their resources. See, if you become that trusted advisor to your sphere of influence, to your target audience, to your prospects, man, you got a mate. Okay. Now a lot of people go like, oh no, scripts make you sound phony, and it might as well be a robot or AI or no, not. Okay, I've been talking lead generation for decades, and so I've got my scripts, I've got my dialogues, but I think I can still talk like a real person to real people on most of this stuff most of the time. Is there a purpose? Is there an objective? Of course there is, right? But then it's not about verbatim scripts. This is kind of one of those oddities. And if you've been in the performing arts at all, then you know that yes, there's a script, right? There's an actual words that people need to say. But then when you hear them say the same words, they sound different every time. Okay? I've been present at listing presentation contests where people were required, they could not deviate from the script. They had to use the same script. And we were just mesmerized by people being just amazing in how to use inflection, speed, voice tempo, pitches, um, demonstrating stuff, using examples, telling stories, what they were able to create out of one and the same script was just mind-boggling. Okay, so make it yours. Make it yours. Absolutely, perfectly fine. And just gauge whether it works. Right? The script gives you objectives, gives you structures. It doesn't necessarily have to give you sentences. That's the beauty, because the audience of two, you can kind of customize it as needed. Right? So short and simple, right? Hey, how are you doing? Wanted to catch up. What's your house plans for the next few years? Right? Or do you have any housing plans for the next few years? Right? No harm there. Curiosity question. Are you planning to stay in the home for long term? Any reservations planned? Anyone in your circle thinking of moving? Right? Now, I wouldn't ask all three. Pick one. Right? Here's a bias question. And again, you don't have to follow this script or any script, right? But have one that you are comfortable with. So if you're talking to a curious buyer, right, then let them talk because they will tell you exactly what they want and want you to know. Conversely, if you don't know them at all and you don't even know how serious they are and they come into an open house, you asking them, have you seen what homes are doing in your area or this area lately, is a perfectly good question. Why? Because it will identify whether or not they're actually aware of what's going on in the marketplace, and it will pretty quickly identify and isolate the serious from the not so serious. Okay, if the right price came along, would you consider selling? Well, I don't know what the right price is. Well, would you like to have an evaluation done? Low pressure, high impact. People used to say everything is for sale, right? Okay, well, prove it. So, what crazy number should somebody write on a check for you to be interested in selling? Okay, if it's absolutely ridiculous, then okay, well, maybe we'll have a talk in 5 years or 10 years or what have you. But if it's realistic, then you know it doesn't happen very often anymore. But there's still people around that will say, "Oh, I bought my house for X, say $200,000, 300,000, 20, 25 years ago. So if I get $350,000 now, I'd be happy, and the house is probably worth $1 million." And then if you then actually say, "Well, would you be offended if it was a lot more than that?" And now they're curious. Right? So now that particular scenario doesn't play out very often, but it does happen. It certainly has happened to me on various occasions. Normalize fear, right? It feels a little scary because it matters. It's important. The funny thing is, I've had many, many people talk about all kinds of different forms of prospecting. Right? There was a period of time that door knocking, i.e., going door to door to door to door to door, and knock on the door and say, "Hey, do you know if anybody is thinking about buying or selling?" Or, "Hey, we noticed that the house up the street just became listed. Have you, because of that, maybe started thinking about selling yourself? Do you know what that one is on the market for? And do you think yours is better or worse?" All kinds of ways to have a conversation, right? And a lot of people think that they're going to have negative responses, but most of the time they're not. They're actually very positive responses. And yeah, if you have some valuable information to share, then people are absolutely interested. So, and by the way, yes, very true. The most veteran realtors will absolutely be just as scared as you are. Oh yeah, get used to the word no. Rejection isn't a absolute. It is a redirection. It doesn't mean never. It just means not now. Some cases it means tell me more. You haven't given me any reasons to say yes yet. Okay. So those are absolutely truisms, and you find them out as you do it. So initially you're going to be a little bit apprehensive about it. I get that. However, you do get some muscle memory, I guess, mental memory. Over time, you actually become quite good at reading the responses. And then you can have some fun with them. Okay. Repetition absolutely breeds confidence. Okay. So the first 20 times, you're building some courage. The next 100, you build some skills. And the skills are necessary, right? Yeah, you may be fumbling the first few times, and that's okay. And you can actually just say, hey, listen, I'm new at this, just as new as you are. Typically don't do door knocking, but as it happens, a house in the neighborhood recently sold, and we're working with some buyers for homes like the homes in this neighborhood. Have you considered? Right? Would you be interested in hearing what your property could be worth today? If you don't ask, you don't get. Okay, time blocking. Work in prospecting time blocks. Right now, here is a bit of a generous 60-minute block, 15 minutes in prep, 30 minutes in actual conversation, and then 15 minutes in note taking and follow up. I'm not buying that. Okay. I'm not a big believer in that model. I do believe in the notes and follow up. I don't think you need 15 minutes to prep. You need 1 or 2 minutes to just kind of, okay, where's my stuff? Who am I talking to? What is going on? If you have a proper CRM, a contact management system, then your CRM should be telling you exactly who to call, who to talk to, what to do, and what the conversation is going to be like, so that you can spend as much as 40 minutes in actual conversations. And if you can do 2 blocks of those a day, then you're golden. You're doing awesome. Now, if this works for you, then so be it. Okay? But don't let the prep time kind of become imposing on your conversation time. You got to make the connections. Sorry, you got to make the connections. All right. 10 conversations, 5 follow-ups, 1 appointment at 10. If you can do that, right? If you hear what this says, you read what this says, right? This is 1 appointment a day, 5 days a week. How cool is that? Okay. In a previous session, we talked about a fellow that he strictly was doing cold call. That's all he did. And all of his cold calling came straight from the phone book. And nowadays, you would have to use doing a call list and some tool called tele-listing, and so you can graphically see what you're doing and where you're phoning and so on and so forth. But it's still doable. There are some brokers that offer this. Our brokerage has it, but other solutions may involve you subscribing to the do not call list in your community, and then you can check what phone numbers you can call and what you can't. But the point of the exercise for him was he would make somewhere around 2 hours worth of calls, 2 hours, 2.5 hours per day. No prep time, because his prep was the phone book. It didn't matter to him who he'd call. He would just literally phone. Right? And so he would phone 30, 40 people a day. Okay? But he got so good at it that on average, he would end up writing down 3 appointments a day. Now, he never went on any of these appointments. He would refer the appointments out, and he would literally phone the agents that he had relationship with and say, okay, you need to show up then there, right? And these people are interested in buying, these people are interested in selling, right? Now, he was only making referral money, right? 25, 30%, 35%. I think he got as much as 35% on average of the commission that the agent that he was referring the leads to. But he was so good at it, right? but that had built over time. That he could he could almost smell a lead the moment that people picked up the phone. Is that good? You get a little bit of, I guess, muscle memory, mental memory. All right, you got to track everything, right? If you don't track it, it didn't happen. So your notes, your tags, your tasks, the names, your contacts, everything's got to end up in your CRM. Now, could you still do this manually? Yeah, in theory. I wouldn't. It just doesn't make any sense. Now you want to go from lead generation to relationship building in the shortest possible time, right? So if you have tens and tens of, or even hundreds of thousands of people in your database that you have a relationship with, and that you maintain that relationship by, reconnecting with them on a regular basis, you're never actually lead generation anymore. You're never actually prospecting proactively anymore. You're just building and nurturing those relationships. And so you're always working inside of your CRM because you just keep adding more value to it, right? Hope that makes sense. Oh, this is such an important word. The word consistency in this business is everything. Everything. Prospecting done poorly consistently outperforms prospecting done perfectly occasionally, right? Consistency always wins, even if it's done not great. But if you stay in touch with people, they will absolutely respect and appreciate it. Now, do you want to slam over the head every single time and ask for business? No, that's not what relationship building is about. But being able to periodically ask for some business, absolutely, right? So follow up. Follow up turns leads into clients. And by the way, leads into friends and relationships and heaven forbid, marriages and referrals. I mean, I was working personally at one point in time with a lot of seniors. I ended up with so many of their kids and their grandchildren and neighbors and friends of the seniors. And if they went into a senior home, they would send me referrals from it and so on and so forth. So the loyalty that comes from having solid relationships with your clients is unbelievable. And there's nothing better than that. Nothing better. When you get one of those phone calls that says, come list my house, and you ask, well, how did you find me? Oh, so-and-so referred me. They said I shouldn't talk to anybody else but you. Oh, okay, well, that's amazing when that happens. So the 3-day follow-up rule, always follow up within 72 hours. So you do something with people, right? You send them something, you have something for them, follow up within 72 hours. If the information, the internet was an internet lead, it's less than 72 hours. It better be within 48 hours. If somebody inquired and you haven't responded within 10 minutes, they're gone on the internet, right? So follow-up has to also be more intense, more focused. Very, very, very important. Okay. Nurture sequence is kind of an interesting concept. So you go from the first 4 or 5 interactions are probably within, you got your first 2 or 3 are 48 hours, 72 hours maximum. Then you go to weekly, and then you go bi-weekly, then you go monthly. Okay. Now, in the monthly, you may still have some special situations, like, I don't know, a Canada Day or the holidays, or some celebration or something of significance that you do want to touch on, and you keep it valuable. You keep it. Don't go pushy, right? You don't want to go pushy. Okay, so have 10 conversations today. Go after your sphere of influence. Make them warm. Keep it positive for you. It's a good exercise. Number 2, Record yourself saying scripts. Hi, my name is. Are you interested in buying or selling? Or if I could show you without a shadow of a doubt that I can make you financially independent in the next 5 years, would that be worth a cup of coffee? Whatever your script is, okay? Pick one, two, three. Learn how to promote yourself. And then follow that 60-minute prospecting clock. Follow it. Pursue it. Just do it, okay? In the first few times, it's going to be a little harder, but absolutely it will pay off, okay? Now, in the workbook pages, there will be scripts, there will be conversation trackers, prospecting journals. It will all be there for you to use. But if you want to reproduce all of that in your own spreadsheets, absolutely go for it, okay? In the toolkits, you will also have some real prospecting daily activities tracker, a way to kind of deal with fear and apprehension, and then your template for your 10-5-1. So conversations mean pipelines mean appointments means clients mean paychecks. That's it. Confidence is built in the repetitions, not in the results. How many times are you doing this? Keep doing it. Don't stop. It's all practice. Everything is practice. Keep doing it. Okay? So thank you so very much for being here once again. This is an important session. So if you want or need to listen to it again, go do that, because there's a lot in this. It's not difficult. It's not hard. It's not complicated. It's not pressure. But it requires you some discipline and some consistency. Discipline, consistency, big words. Really important. You can do this. This mission is all yours. This mission is done. So thank you so very much for being here. Have a fantastic week and hope to see you soon. All the best.
File saved. The Agent Files. For more missions, agents' tools, and tactical strategies, subscribe and follow the Agent Files, powered by Agent Builder Coaching. Until next time, stay sharp. Your next mission awaits.